Hello, World History 2 students. I just did this lecture, but I didn't record my slides at all, so it was just me talking to myself. And so I'm going to give it another try. This will be maybe the longest, I guess, lecture that we've had. What we're doing is we have looked at a lunchroom fight in lesson 1. We took some notes on World History 1, or at least reviewed, and then we looked at some primary source documents from the Renaissance. For this lesson, we're going to look at more primary source documents, but these are going to be written, and they're going to be written by Martin Luther. Our main goal, the thing that I want you to have in the back of your mind, is that we're looking at this question, which will be your assessment. Why did Martin Luther break away from the Catholic Church? And what impact did his teachings have on Europe? All of this can be found in your textbook in 1.3. Let me look at what page that's on. 1.3 is... That's 3.1. Give me 1 second. 1.3 is page 86 in your textbook. It gives you a pretty good rundown. But this lesson, we're going to actually watch a documentary by Rick Steves on Martin Luther, and it's really, really, really good. I love Rick Steves. If you ever travel, make sure to watch his videos on wherever you're traveling to. They're super good. He only does them on Europe, but this documentary is excellent. We're going to watch that, and then we're going to evaluate primary sources from Martin Luther. We're going to look at 2 writings from him and determine why he broke away from the Catholic Church. This video will, some of the information from this will be in the documentary, but I want to set you up for what this lesson is going to be, okay? So as we go, you're welcome to take notes to the right. I'm also going to highlight a couple of vocabulary terms that I want you to put in the vocab section of your journal here, your PowerPoint journal. So let's go ahead and you just watched this video. This gives you a good rundown of feudalism and what it's like in Europe before the Protestant Reformation. Make sure to jot down some notes. That'll be very useful. And I'm going to continue from that. We're going to talk about the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church still exists today. We still have Pope Francis, who is living in Rome, just like the Pope did during this time in the early 1400s. And we also we have Catholic churches here in Moscow. We actually have one that's just up the street from Moscow High School. And so Catholicism at this point in history is the only version of Christianity. Because I want you to think about Moscow generally, right? We have lots of different churches and lots of different types of religion. And within Christianity, we have several denominations. If we just think what's around the high school, we have the Presbyterian church behind the high school. We have the Methodist church, is that really old building across from the parking lot. We have the Unitarian Universalist church, it's up the street. We have an evangelical church and an Anglican church that meet in the same building. And all of these different churches, these different types, even though you don't know a lot about them, they didn't exist prior to Martin Luther. There was one denomination and one church. It was the Catholic Church. And if you didn't go to it, your life was literally in danger. The Catholic Church was extremely powerful. You can think of it the same way that we hold to like science in our culture was what the Catholic Church did. It controlled the university system. It controlled society. It told everyone through the media that existed, which was the church, the preacher at the church, because the printing press didn't actually exist until 1500. Well, actually 14 something. But anyway, before the printing press, the church is where you got your information, and it came from the Catholic Church. If they said that the sun was that the earth was at the center of the solar system, you said, "Gotcha, thank you. I will continue believing that." Because if you didn't believe it, your life was literally in danger. You could be burned at the stake, or you could just receive severe church discipline and be put in house arrest for the rest of your life. So you had to believe what the Catholic Church said, okay? So the Catholic Church is the only religion in Europe. There are cases like in the Netherlands where other religions such as Judaism, Jews could practice their faith in the Netherlands, for example. But for the most part in Europe, you had to be Catholic. The Catholics believe in it. I'm going to highlight about four things here that I want you to write down and keep in mind. First of all, Catholics emphasize that salvation comes through faith in Jesus Christ and works. Now, salvation, this root word here is save. Okay? How are you saved? And what are you saved from? How you're saved is that you have to believe that Jesus Christ died and was buried, rose again on the third day, and ascended into heaven. And you had to believe in that to get access to heaven. If you didn't believe in that, you were destined for eternal hellfire, an eternity in hell, separated from God. Okay? How did you get saved? In the Catholic Church, you had to have faith in Jesus Christ and in the belief system that I just said. But you also had to demonstrate that you were saved through works. Now, works came in two different ways. They came through sacraments, which I'm not too concerned about you knowing, but sacraments like getting married or getting baptized. These are taking communion. These are religious rituals that guarantee your salvation. And also just simply from works of like being a good person, being a generous person, were demonstrations that you were righteous, that you were good, and that you were going to heaven. Okay? Now, just a quick side note, Martin Luther is going to disagree with this. He's going to say salvation comes through faith, period. It's called sola fide. He doesn't believe that you have to practice any sort of works. Simply believing in Jesus is enough. And he bases this off of a verse in Romans. You'll see a little bit more about this in the documentary. The second one is truth. It's about truth. Truth is, how do you know what you know to be true? Today, for example, it's a great question. How do we know that something is true? And usually it's through news media, for example. If you've never been to a place, the only thing you know about it is what you see through the internet or on TV, right? Or what you read about in a newspaper. In this case, what was determined to be true was determined by the church and its traditions. If the Pope said that the Earth was at the center of the solar system, you would believe it. It was truth. This differs from Martin Luther, who believed that truth came directly from the Bible. Now, the Catholics believe that truth, that the Bible was the Word of God, it was written by God, and that they would read it to get truth out of it. But the issue there is, you can read the Bible and come to different conclusions about what it means, because we're human beings. So it was the church's role to interpret the Bible and make sure everybody knew what it said. Okay? So they believe that the truth came from their interpretation of the Bible. So a good example of this is baptisms. There's a difference in Christianity between baptisms. The idea of should someone be baptized when, if they're a Christian, should they be baptized after they're born? They get baptized and then they're baptized in the church, they belong to the church? Or do they have to wait until they can profess their belief in Jesus and they have the cognitive ability to do so before they're baptized? Now, the Catholic Church, you can use the Bible and actually argue either way, but the Catholic Church said, no, you get baptized when you're a baby, or if you aren't saved, you can be baptized later, and that's how they interpreted it. Okay, so you can come, however they interpret it, that's what truth is. Martin Luther will say something different. He'll say that everybody can read the Bible and arrive at the truth on their own. They don't need a priest or a pope to tell them what it says. Okay? And this is very important because this leads to the idea of truth not being up here and it's just given to you and you have no say in it. It's you determine your own truth. And we can see this manifested today. I'm sure all of you believe in many interesting things, and the reason that you're able to and free to is partially due to Martin Luther. The idea of identity, like what is your identity, your sexual identity or what have you, this idea of you deciding what that is partially due to Martin Luther. Otherwise, you'd simply have to say, I am whatever the Catholic Church says, or I am whatever the king says. And Martin Luther is challenging these authority structures. Okay? The third thing is that the Catholic Church is the only church in Europe, but it just as a side note, there's another version of Christianity in the East, in the Middle East, and in Russia called the Orthodox Church. But that church has really no station in Europe. And this is a result of the East-West schism, which was a splitting of Christianity. So both Orthodox Christians and Catholics will both say that they go all the way back to Jesus. The Catholic Church, for example, says that their first pope was Jesus' disciple, Peter. That Peter, the disciple of Jesus, was the very first pope. He's the rock that the church is built on. And that the popes that exist, even to this day, Pope Francis, trace their lineage back all the way to Peter. That's in Catholic tradition. Sorry about my microphone. And the last thing that's very important when we're talking about the Protestant Reformation in the Catholic Church is that sermons were in Latin, not in vernacular. Now, in your vocab section, I believe that salvation pops up. You'll want to write that means saved, and you can search this into Google also. But the other one is vernacular. Vernacular just means common speech. It's what everybody's speaking. In this case, English, right? I'm speaking in English. I'm not speaking in Spanish. The vernacular that we're using today in this lecture is English, okay? Now, in the Catholic Church at this time, this is not true today. I think it was the case that sermons were in Latin until the 1970s, but Catholics, please correct me if I'm wrong. But all sermons were in Latin, which was a language of the elite academics, the humanists. Does anybody know, actually, raise your hand, if you know what country spoke Latin? If you said Rome, that's right. So Rome spoke Latin, and because of that, because they were the last dominant civilization in Europe, a lot of ancient texts were written in Latin. So if you wanted to be an educated person, you had to learn Latin in order to read works by Cicero, or even Greek works that were translated to Latin like Plato. And if you wanted to read the Bible, they did not have it in vernacular. The only way you could read it is if you spoke Latin. And only a small chunk, a small percentage of people in Europe could actually read Latin. So the Catholic Church, when they spoke their sermons to a bunch of people in the room that didn't speak Latin, they were speaking in Latin. Okay, so they're in Germany, where the people speak the vernacular German, but their sermon is in Latin. So talk about a boring church service, like it's in another language, right? So these are the basic things. The Catholic Church is the dominant force, and these are a couple of the essential things that you need to know about it at this point, okay? So, as I said, we're going to look at how Martin Luther unravels this. We're going to look at two documents, one from a young Martin Luther, one from an old Martin Luther, and look at why he broke from these ideas, why he broke from the Catholic Church. But before we do that, we need to kind of set the stage here. So when Martin Luther takes off, you can see that the Reformation begins in Germany and spreads through Northern Europe. Before Martin Luther, all of this is Catholic, okay? So Catholics still exist in Southern Europe. Now, just looking at this map, if you were going to challenge the Catholic Church, just based off geography, why would you challenge it from the north? Take a look at the map. What do you think? Why would an uprising? Why would an uprising against Catholic Church start north in Northern Europe? If you said Rome, again, you are correct. Rome is in Southern Europe. It's in Italy. So you have the Pope, who has all the religious power, and he's tithing all the people, taxing. Tithe is a type of church tax. Okay, he's tithing all of the people from around Europe, taking their money, taking a little chunk of their money, and sending it to Rome to make, as we saw in the Renaissance, make amazing paintings, amazing sculptures, cool architecture. Okay, he's taking all that money. So naturally, any sort of pushback would come from up here, where they don't have access to all that cool stuff. Okay, and this is why Martin Luther starts the Protestant Reformation in this city, Wittenberg, to challenge the Catholic Church. So what factors set the stage for the Protestant Reformation? There's three. Okay, now you should write these down and know them and put them in your journal. There's a shift from a medieval economy to a market-based economy. I want to actually write this down. Let's get on my drawing pad here. Shoot. You know what? You won't be able to see it anyway. But the medieval economy is the feudal economy, that video that we saw before. You can think of a pyramid, okay? You guys probably know what feudalism is, but up at the top you have the king. Below the king you have the nobles. Below the nobles you have the knights. Below the knights you have the commoners. And that's how the economy worked. The king said, hey, we need to make more swords because I want to go to war. That's what the economy did. Everybody started producing swords. If he said, hey, we need to grow potatoes, they're way better than wheat. They give you more better nutrition. Okay, we're switching over. He decided that. Now, what happens in Italy and ultimately the northern state countries as well, is there's a shift to the market-based economy. And this actually starts with the Renaissance in Florence with the Medici family. The Medici family are bankers. Okay, they actually start loaning money out, which people weren't doing that time, unless you were Jewish. The reason, because the Catholic Church said usury or loaning money on interest was against the Bible and you couldn't do it. But the Medici find like a loophole and they start doing it and they make a lot of money. And they make so much money just as commoners. They're at the bottom of the feudal structure, okay? They make so much money that they start rivaling the power of kings and queens and nobles. This disturbs the power structures in Europe. And it means that you don't have to have fancy noble blood and you don't to be powerful. So this breaks down the current structure of government where you have faith in a king, faith in the Pope, to having these merchants that actually have an equal amount of power. And so this causes a breakdown in society. It means that it's easy for somebody to start a revolution or a reformation within Europe. The second thing is that humanist ideas lead to skepticism of the church. In the Renaissance, we talk about humanist ideas. Humanism is this focus on the human experience, which you can see in the Renaissance artwork by how realistic the art is and how it emphasizes just common everyday people like the bean eater, right? And also it's a study of classic Roman and Greek texts, which, technically were not Christian. Plato existed before Jesus, so he wasn't Christian, right? So these ideas start spreading with the printing press, and it leads to skepticism of the church. They start saying like, hey, why do you have to tell me what's true? I can decide what's true for myself, okay, through my own human experience. It stops being so hierarchy-centered, starts being more human-centered. And this leads to a skepticism in the church. Skepticism is also a vocab word. It just means a questioning attitude. You're skeptical of what somebody's telling you. You're doubting what they're saying. You're doubting that what they're saying is true, okay? The last one here is that popes become political. Popes, should be, they're supposed to be God on earth. They're supposed to be like basically Jesus on earth. The idea is that they're holy, that they're representing godly things like peace and love, okay? But what happens is when the bubonic plague hits, the bubonic plague makes it so that a lot of people die. A third of Europe dies. And some of these people were very qualified to be priests and popes and cardinals in the Catholic Church. So what happens is when those people die, you got to settle for second best or third best if the second best guy dies too, right? So you have to settle for lower quality individuals to fill positions such as pope, priest, cardinal. This leads to people not being as faithful in the Christian faith and not being as holy or as qualified for their job. And this leads to corruption in the Catholic Church. At one point, there's 3 people fighting to be pope. They all say they're in pope, and they're all pope and located in different places. And there's a lot of fighting. They're providing money to kings to fight wars. They're going on crusades. And because of this, people start to see the corruption in the church, and they start to doubt it. And this brings us to Martin Luther. Now, a lot of this next part is going to be in the video, but I'm just going to go through it anyway. The first thing you need to know about Martin Luther is what indulgences are. Indulgences were part of the corruption of the Catholic Church, and basically just a way to remember it is it's a way to buy your way into heaven, okay? Let's say you have an uncle, and he's just sinned all the time, right? He's a terrible person, and he's racked up a lot of sin debt, but he's still a faithful Christian. He just messes up a lot, right? He can buy off all those sins just by paying money to the Catholic Church, and those sins will be forgiven. Now, this gets a little bit confusing. It's not exactly buying your way into heaven. It's a little bit different. You have to understand purgatory. Purgatory is a place that it's a Catholic doctrine, and the Catholics believe after you die, at least at this time, that you go to a place called purgatory. You don't go directly to heaven or hell. If you're a saved Christian, you believe in Jesus Christ, you would go to purgatory, which is like a waiting room for heaven, okay? The root word in purgatory is purge, like the movie The Purge, right? Basically, purge means to like get out of you. It's basically like vomiting, okay? Now, what you would do is go to purgatory, and all of your evil sinfulness, you would vomit out of you. You'd be purged of it. It would be vomited out of you because you can't enter into God's presence unless you are perfect yourself. You're holy yourself. God is holy. No sin can exist in him according to Catholic doctrine. He's perfect. So the idea is that in order to enter into God's presence, you have to be holy and perfect. And so purgatory was a place where you'd get your sins purged out of you. Now, what indulgences did is you would pay money, so that agonizing experience in purgatory where you're being having your sins forcibly removed out of you, you are paying money to get through that whole process faster and less painfully. So everybody believed in this because, again, truth comes from the Catholic Church. They're the fake news of the day. They control the news media, right? And people would pay money. There was a saying that as soon as a coin in the coffer, clings, a soul from purgatory springs. I think I'm messing that up. But the idea was you just go up to this guy here in the picture and pay him some money, and you'd get a certificate. That would mean you spent less time in purgatory. Now, this whole thing was created by Pope Leo X, which is an important figure in the story. He's the antagonist, the enemy of Martin Luther. And weirdly enough, Pope Leo X, his real name was Giovanni Medici. He was actually a Medici, the ones that would fund the Renaissance artwork, and a banker from a banker family. And they had gotten so powerful that they were able to get somebody into the position of pope. And he is a corrupt pope. He doesn't take it very seriously. A famous quote from him is, "Since God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it." The papacy being the office of pope, okay? So he creates these indulgences to fund a church called St. Peter's Basilica. This is a painting of St. Peter's Basilica. It's pretty epic. You can notice the classicism or the humanism here, this throwback to archways that are very typical of Greek and Roman structures, right? This example of humanism. I've actually been here before. I'll show you some pictures here in a second. And St. Peter's Basilica is like a big church, is still there today. And it's actually the place that St. Peter, the disciple of Jesus, technically, according to Catholic tradition, the first pope, it's where he is buried. He's actually this thing at the end here, this altar, he's directly below that. I went there and asked, I'm really skeptical using that word, and I said, is it really Peter, though? Like, is it really? And they actually got in and carbon dated his body and found that it does date back to about around 30 AD, which was the time of Christ. And so they say it is legitimate. It's very possible that it is actually Peter. Peter, the reason the church is here is because this is actually the place where Peter was killed for being a Christian. He was crucified upside down. He refused to be crucified like his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So they actually turned it upside down, so it was different. I don't know why they listened to him, but anyway, that's the story. So the indulgences were being used to build this epic church. This is from the outside. This is actually a miniature. You can see these are fake people. If you go to the Vatican is a country located within the city of Rome. And it's still there today and at this time. And it's its own country, and you can literally see from one side to the other. But within the Vatican and Rome generally, there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff from history, because anytime a king took over another country or whatever, they would send back tribute or like cool stuff back to the Pope. So you see all kinds of stuff. For example, this obelisk here in the middle. This is an Egyptian obelisk that was shipped all the way back from Egypt. That means it had to cross the Mediterranean Sea. And they have tons of these in Rome. If you go to churches in the Vatican, if you go to churches in Rome, they're seriously everywhere. Little churches, they're like Starbucks coffee shops, or like McDonald's basically in Rome. And you go into them, you'll see so many statues, like cluttered with amazing statues. Like I walked up to one, I'm like, wow, that's a really cool statue. And I looked at who did it, and it's like Michelangelo, and it's just sitting out in the open. There's a basement in the below St. Peter's Basilica. This is filled with stuff that the Pope had taken from all over the world. So it's pretty impressive. This dome is modeled after the Duomo in Florence. It was actually Michelangelo was the architect that constructed this. Michelangelo his work is everywhere in Rome. It doesn't show it in the miniature, but there's a building here. This is where the Sistine Chapel would be. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel is here. Michelangelo's Pieta statue is inside. Raphael's School of Athens is here. All kinds of stuff that we've already looked at is located here. This is the inside. This is the Pieta. It's actually, you can't get close to it anymore. It's behind a glass case because a dude in the 1970s who was insane busted in with a sledgehammer, not sure how you get that through the front door, and came at the Pieta, which was made by Michelangelo, same guy who did the David, and he smashed the toe off of the Pieta of Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, smashed the toe off, and he was tackled to the ground by some U.S. Marines. So from now, it's behind this case. It's really moving to see it. This is made out of solid marble, and it's really an amazing piece. It's a lot smaller than David, but really cool. This is the dome Michelangelo worked on. This really does not do it justice how big it is. Each one of these letters here, these Roman Latin letters, is 10 feet tall, just to put it into context. And right below this is this altar. And this altar is made of solid gold that was melted down from the Parthenon, which is located in Rome. The Parthenon is the oldest continually active church in all of the world. I think since 500 BC, it's been an active church. It was actually a pagan place of like Greek, of Roman worship of pagan gods, and then it became a Catholic church. But anyway, they took gold out of it, they melted it down, they made this altar. Bernini, another famous artist after Michelangelo, made it. And this is dove, it represents the Holy Spirit. And directly below this is St. Peter, his body, supposedly. And the Pope will give masses, basically like a service, a church service from this altar. This is outside. Actually, out here, the Pope's like, this is the Sistine Chapel over here, and then farther is like the Pope's apartment. And he actually gave a speech from here and gave a blessing over a bunch of people here when I was there in 2017. And I received a blessing in Latin from the Pope. I don't know what he said. He might have been talking trash about me. I really don't know. So anyway, indulgences were used to make this. And Martin Luther actually did a pilgrimage down here and saw the construction of this and saw the cool things in Rome. And he was very disappointed because he believed that the Catholic Church was flaunting their wealth too much. Okay, and that he cited the Bible verse, it's easier for a rich man to go through, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. And so Martin Luther was really, took this pilgrimage to go to Rome, the holy city, and ended up being very disappointed, and you'll see that in the movie. So Martin Luther, again, actually I don't think I said this, but he was a Catholic monk. He was troubled by the practice of indulgences. And he wrote a letter to the Archbishop of Mainz to explain his position of why he was against indulgences. The Pope considered Luther's position to be heretical. Heretical is a heretic, is someone who goes against church doctrine. Okay, he was excommunicated from the church. That means kicked out. It also means that he could have been killed, but he escaped capture, actually. At least it could mean you're arrested and put in jail. And Luther gained support from a group of German princes who protected him and then allowed him to spread his ideas. So what we're doing today is we are going to look at a video that gives you a good overview of Martin Luther's life and why he broke from the church. And keep in mind, you want to look at this question, why did he break away from the Catholic Church and what was his impact on Europe? That's what you're going to ultimately be assessed on. After you watch that video, we're going to look at some primary sources, some actual writings from Martin Luther. You're going to read one from a young Martin Luther as to why he broke from the Catholic Church, and an old Martin Luther as why he broke from the Catholic Church. And you'll need to determine, why did Martin Luther challenge the Catholic Church, according to those two, according to young and old Martin Luther. They both give different accounts, and so you'll need to reconcile that and figure out why Martin Luther broke away from the church. So after that, the final assessment of this lesson, of lesson 5, is that you'll write a eulogy on Martin Luther. Now, a eulogy is a speech that's given during someone's funeral after they pass away. And what you're going to do in this eulogy is explain the impact, why Martin Luther broke from the Catholic Church and his impact on all of Europe. You'll want to use the same ideas that we used in the suspension report during the lunchroom fight, which is you'll kind of want to be thinking like making a claim. You'll want to use evidence from all the different things that we looked at from this lecture, from the video, from the documents. Use evidence and then write down, using that evidence, basically argue what was his impact on all of Europe. Don't be too structured about it. My main goal is I want to see that you understand Martin Luther's impact and what he did, and why it's important, and you need to write that in the eulogy. That'll be probably what I pay the most attention to in this whole journal thing that you're working through. And so make sure to write well on that. As always, contact me at daleaboutg@gmail.com if you have any questions. I'm happy to help you out. And if you have any questions, hopefully we can talk in class or over Zoom and resolve it. Thank you for watching.